Good morning. I'd like to call the July 16th meeting of the El Paso County Planning Commission to order. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Trowbridge. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. Before we get into business, I will appoint the voting members for today. It will be Mr. Byers, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Whitney, Mr. Shipples, Mr. Brewer, and the chair. So we have 6 members present, so we do have a quorum.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
we do have Jason Wolf online as well, so you can add him as a voting member.
okay, I will do that. Morning, Mr. Wolf. All right. So that means we have 7 members. We'll be fine. All right. With that, I can find my agenda. All right, we'll start with staff report items. Ms. Harrington?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commission members. Megan Harrington, Planning Director. I do not have any announcements for you this morning, but I would like to turn it over to Carrie Parsons on staff because we do have one request for a change in the agenda alignment this morning.
Okay.
Good morning. Staff requests that item number 6, which is a non-action item, be moved immediately following the item number 1, the report items, if that would be okay.
I will pull it up, absolutely.
Thank you.
Not a problem, thank you. Is there anything else from staff? No? All right. With that, we do have time on our agenda each time we meet for public comment for items that aren't on our agenda. Is there anybody in the audience today or online who would like to speak about something that's not on our calendar today? Okay, seeing none. Move into the consent items. We'll start with the adoption of minutes. Commissioners, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting? Any comments or corrections? Seeing none, we will deem the minutes from the July 2nd meeting approved. All right, with that, the next consent item, item P264, the map amendment rezone for the Kyle rezone. I've had a couple of commissioners ask me to pull that, to hear that as a regular item. So we will move that down to the called up consent items. And with that, then, as Ms. Parsons requested, we will move item number 6, U261, the Falcon Fire Protection District Training Facility Complex. We'll pull that up now so that the chief can get back to work. Good morning, Ms. Parsons.
Good morning. All right, thank you very much for allowing us to move this up. So this is technically a non-action item, so there is no vote. This is just to come before you for informational purposes. So Falcon Fire Protection District did submit to staff, to PCD, a application for an approval of location. The approval of location has a 30-day period from date of received to get to the Planning Commission. Because of the amount of weeks in July and the in-between dates, we were not able to make that date and complete a full review. However, staff, in working with our partners at Falcon Fire Protection District, wanted to get you that information in case there was any inquiries. So today we're presenting to you some information on the proposal. It will not go before the Planning Commission because we'll have we will have surpassed that 30-day window, which is an automatic approval. And then always reminding the planning commissioners that an approval of location, if it were to have been denied at a planning commission, the appealing authority is actually the Fire Protection District's board. So with that said, briefly, description of the facility. This is meant to be a training facility for Falcon Fire Protection District. It would be a building for classrooms, a tower for training that would not exceed 45 feet, which is the maximum height in the commercial service zoning district, and potentially an additional building for further classroom or community studies later on down the road. The property has already been final platted. It is actually served by Woodman Hills Metropolitan District, and it is a finding of sufficiency was made for this lot at the time of the AFTA subdivision approval. CSU is the gas provider, and there will be no emergency responses from this facility, so they won't dispatch fire protection trucks or emergency vehicles from this facility. So the traffic impact is anticipated to be very low. We will deal directly with the traffic impacts at the site development plan. The applicants are anticipated to submit that site development plan to staff for full review shortly. This is an aerial map of the site. You can see that it's east of US Highway 24 and immediately adjacent to the city of Colorado Springs, more recently annexed land. So to the west here, that's all within the city of Colorado Springs. The area, as I mentioned, is already zoned commercial service. A public building, public project is an allowed use in the commercial service, as is an emergency facility building. The approval of location, specifically, the process is to determine if a public use structure or utility proposed for a location in unincorporated El Paso County conforms to the master plan. So again, the property is already zoned commercial service, so conformance was made at the time of rezoning and of final plat. And again, these are allowed uses within that zoning district. The place type is regional center, just for information. So again, the Planning Commission is not voting on this, but the approval locations criteria for approval is conformance with the master plan. So just for the record, it would be conformance with, this would conform with the place type. See here, in the master plan, specifically chapter 7 of our master plan, there's some language as to public services for fire protection districts. So again, this type of facility would be consistent with the master plan. And then with the permission from the chair, I'd like to ask the chief to come up and kind of give a little presentation. We have some photos uploaded.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Board, thank you. Carrie, thank you. Chief Trent Harwig, HARWIG, Falcon Fire Protection District. The picture you have before you is just a conceptual plan at this time, but this is the actual classroom and training center that will be built on the site. This will be built on the west end of the site, adjacent to the new Circle K gas station that's there. Again, it's just conceptual at this time. We're just starting to work with the architect on it, but this is kind of the design. It's about a 6,000 square foot facility with about half of it is a large training room, if you will, like this room. Carrie, do you want to move on to the? Yeah, I know.
There we go.
Okay, just another view of it with just a box view of what the training tower would kind of look like sitting there next to it.
So the training tower is on the further west side next to Meridian.
The training tower will be on the far southeast side of the property.
Southeast side, okay.
So adjacent to the city of Colorado Springs, the new Meridian Road. As far away from, there's 5 or 6 residential properties on the, I guess that would be considered the northeast side. We try to keep that part of it as far away from them as possible. Again, this is one of many, but we are rounding it down to just a few training towers. They are all about the same, but they do. So I don't want to guarantee that this is the exact final look, but this is close. These are built out of metal. They have all of the props and everything within them. They are erected by the company that you buy it from. Those are mods, actually, pods. They just stack pods and they have the design inside. We are designing it for both class clean burn, so natural gas, and there will be some burn rooms that are class A, which is actually smoke generating, but they're small. They're on the farthest end of the building and they're not used very often. There's just a need for that because of thermal layering. You have to actually train for that, so you burn those products sometimes. But the majority of the building is a clean burn for lots of reasons. It's safer. You can cycle people through it faster. It does not generate smoke or any odors. It will have a smoke generation system, but that is a water vapor system. It's not toxic. You could breathe it, but you could actually, it fills the building and you'll see smoke billowing out of all of the windows when it's fully running. But again, you could just walk in and breathe that smoke, and it doesn't smell. So that is, now, Carrie did mention that adjacent to this, we were going to build a covered pavilion for hot days and whatever. So that's where the crews can rest and prepare for their next training session. We have decided, it sounds like, to actually enclose that building, so more of a pole barn type building, if you will, with garage doors that can all be opened up and still work as that pavilion, because we have training props that are on trailers that we need somewhere to store them, so we'll store them in that building. Those are like forcible entry training trailers, and we also have a draft commander that we use for all of our pump testing and just various trailers and other excess equipment. So to keep it, for instead of being all outside, it'll be inside that building, pulled out as needed. So there will be 3 buildings proposed on the site. There will also be some minor areas for like auto extrication training and such and whatnot, but those will be fenced in. We'll have a fence around those to keep it aesthetically nice. That, I don't have much more to add to that. I mean, I do want to take a minute to recognize your people that work down here in planning. We've obviously, not just on this project, we've built 3 fire stations in the last 10 years or so. We've built a administration building. Things have really grown out there, a maintenance facility. We work with them on all of those projects, plus every other project that's happening in Falcon, which it seems like it's been one after another. I've been there doing this for 20 years now, and it's changed. But we work with your staff constantly, and we appreciate every one of them.
Any questions for the chief? I guess I did have one. Will there be a perimeter fence
Yes.
around it to
Yeah.
keep the looky-loos out?
Yeah, for lots of reasons, but yes, that'd be one of the first things that goes in as soon as we get started here. Is we're going to completely perimeter fence it, and it will have an automatic gate on the one entrance.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you for being here
Okay.
today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, and we look forward to working with you on the development plan and the rest of it as we move forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any questions for staff?
Don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. All right. With that, I'd like to go back to the pulled up consent item, which is P264, map amendment rezone for Kyle rezone. And I understand Ms. Bagley's not here to present, so, Ryan. Right.
Okay. Morning, everyone. As the chair stated, this is case number P264 for the Kyle rezone. I am obviously not Kylie Bagley. For the record, my name is Ryan Hauser. I'm a planner with Planning and Community Development Department, El Paso County. With engineering for Department of Public Works, we have Jalal. Just a quick summary of the procedure for this hearing. We'll go through the staff presentation, then we'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation, then public comment. If there's any public comment on this item, there'll be an opportunity for the applicant to rebut, and then we'll open it up for questions, and then the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for this item. This slide shows the criteria of approval for a rezone. I won't stay on this page for too long, but this is more for the folks in the audience so they understand. This is the criteria that's being considered with this type of application. So this is the criteria the Planning Commission members and when this item goes to the Board of County Commissioners, what the commissioners will consider with a rezone application. And it's primarily the topic of discussion at this hearing is determining whether or not the application actually is consistent with this criteria. The request is for a rezone from RR5 rural residential to RM30 for multifamily residential on approximately 13.25 acres. Property is generally located on the south side of Highway 24, and I believe this map is a little bit better for context. Just to show generally where this property is located. This road here being Woodman Road, which ends here at Highway 24. And you can see immediately at the terminus of Woodman here, this L-shaped property is the Commons at Falcon Field development, which you all may be familiar with. The GIS map is not totally accurate with regards to the Falcon Field project. That portion that's labeled as RS 5000 here is actually RM12, and that was a rezone that was completed several years ago. So that project has since undergone some rezone applications and a preliminary plan for a mixed-use development consisting of a mix of high-density residential, medium-density residential, and commercial. And then located on the north side of Woodman is primarily commercially zoned properties and high-density residential properties, just to kind of give you a sense of the context that this property is located within. And then surrounding that area, we have rural residential properties. This slide just more or less shows the relationship between the existing zoning district and the proposed zoning. So we are going from a very, very low density residential zoning district to the highest density multifamily residential district that the Land Development Code has to offer. So that could potentially allow up to 30 dwellings per acre. If they wanted to do apartments. Obviously, multifamily zoning could also be supportive of single-family development if they wanted to go that route as well. This is just the maximum that's allowed in the zoning district. And that pretty much covers this slide. I don't want to dwell too long on that either. With regards to the master plan, which you all may have noticed was one of the criteria for approval for a rezone application, this property is located within the regional center place type, which is supportive of multifamily development. It is listed as a recommended land use type. It is located within the transition area of change, which this proposal could be considered compatible with the identifications, with the recommendations identified in the transitional area of change, which are primarily urban in nature. Property is also located in the potential area for annexation key area. So while the applicant is not proposing annexation at this time, this key area does also identify that development that would occur in this area should primarily match that of the proximate jurisdiction that annexation could be considered for. So staff would feel confident that this type of development could be compatible with what they would probably request if it was annexed, if that makes sense. And then at that, I would like to turn it over to engineering to discuss the transportation and the drainage components.
Good morning, gentlemen. Jalal Saleh, El Paso County Engineering. This site is located at 12057 East Highway 24. A traffic impact study was submitted for the proposed map amendment rezoning request, as the development is expected to generate 2,167 average daily vehicle trips. The parcel is proposed to have one right in, right out access point from CDOT Highway 24. And just off the slide, all I want to say that because of the CDOT Highway 24, the control of traffic is more under the jurisdiction of CDOT. Improvements consisting of auxiliary lanes along Highway 24 being identified in the submitted traffic study, which means additional lanes to XL and to DXL are proposed within this. An access permit will be required by CDOT for this parcel. At the time of final plat or site development plan, El Paso County road impact fees, as established by Resolution 25-337, are applicable and will be assessed at the or it will be assessed for before the building permit.
Before you go on, Mr. Saleh,
Okay. Okay.
can you go back to the
The other one?
transportation? Yeah. I believe we have some questions about the transportation.
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr.
Mr.
Byers?
Chair. Mr. Sala, I'm a little concerned about the number of trips that would be generated and the potential number of units that on a single point of access with right in, right out, tucked into a pretty tight corridor. Does the county view this as an approvable point of access?
We are aware of the situation, and there is the project, the Commons at Falcon Field filing 3 is coming in. And what we like to see, another connection from this development to the Commons at Falcon Field filing, and that will bring the connection, another connection to the intersection of Highway 24 with Woodman. But at this point, there is still 2 parcels separating us from that connection. When they come in the future, we already made some provisions in the with the Commons at Falcon Field filing, and there is a stub for a connection there when the 2 lots to the north of us.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. However, those 2 parcels are not currently owned by this developer or this property owner.
Correct.
And what happens if the project goes full bore ahead and we end up with 300 units in there on a single point of access, which is something like 10 times the allowed?
Well, as I started, the control is by CDOT on that intersection. And this, go ahead.
And I can jump in very quick.
Go ahead.
How you doing, Commission? Daniel Torres, Engineering Manager. In regards to your question, Mr. Byers, the traffic study did analyze that and identified the level of services at these intersections are still acceptable at their build out. TDOT did not have any objections to adding that much traffic. They did restrict that. The applicant did ask for more full movement at first and then 3/4, and CDOT identified that right in, right out restriction only. As Mr. Jalal indicated, once that Falcon Field, like he mentioned, there will be that other connection. But for that time being, it was shown within that traffic study that the level of services and mitigation with those auxiliary turn lanes would be sufficient.
Okay. And I just really want to make sure that the property owner is aware that this is a difficult configuration. And there was some other stuff in the traffic report that seemed a little curious. The trips, number one, coming out of the site, I think it was on page 16, there's a graphic that shows something like 40% of the trips basically heading southbound. And there's really no way to get there without going northbound first. So it all funnels through the intersection at Woodman and Highway 24.
Correct. There will be, well, you'd have to get to Woodman, either a U-turn or go around through Woodman and down Meridian. So that was identified in our traffic, at least conversations with SM Rocha, the traffic engineer, identifying that. Once we have more of a development plan and what the actual units,
Right.
we're going to get
perfectly aware of
yeah.
that. I know that this isn't necessarily the criteria, but I think it's important for the applicant to understand this is a difficult configuration on a single point of access.
Correct.
Mr. Bailey?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. You just addressed the question that I had. I wanted to be clearer on the process, and we're very early in the process. The mention of CDOT is primarily because that's important and it's somebody else that we have less control over, but the applicant will be able to, over the course of the next, however long it takes to get this done, to come up with a plan that works to get better access, and it won't be just getting onto 24, most likely. By the time that things come out, the development plan has to be worked first before any of this, and we'll have a chance to see that again as those plans get fleshed out in the future.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it is a CDOT jurisdiction and they control that intersection. So they would identify what would be needed from the applicant if they were to get that access permit. So if that meant allowing another access along that frontage and or restricting this, well, that's kind of the most restrictive that you could have right now with the right in, right out. And then it's also dependent on the amount of units that actually come in. As Ryan indicated with this RM30, right now that traffic study is analyzing the maximum amount. So that could vary, but once that next development plan comes in, they'll update their traffic study with the appropriate numbers and analysis.
And it makes sense at this point to figure out what that most restrictive limit is going to be before you decide to move on to something else. And so I understand the applicant working that to figure out what are my limitations. This gives them enough confidence that asking for a rezone at this level is at least feasible as they move into the further development or further planning.
Correct. And the traffic study also took into account the Highway 24 improvements that will be done. I believe that they're slated to begin next year around this time in the summertime, which would increase the amount of through lanes through Highway 24. So that is also part of their analysis.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair,
Mr. Shipples?
I echo the same concerns with the trips right in, right out, Highway 24. one access there. It's great to say, hey, we're going to have an extra exit up north, but you don't own that property. You may never own that property, and so that may never happen. And then also my concern with that, not only the traffic coming out and more left turns on Woodman, because if you drive that road, that left turn lane is used a lot. Now you've got a lot of U-turns going on there, and then a lot of U-turns down on South Meridian that's coming back up to get in. But then also we've got the fire department here. One access for 300 units if there's a fire for people getting out and for firemen getting in. I just see that as not a great scenario. And I know I'm jumping the gun because this is the rezone, but should it be rezoned to this if that's a future issue? So certainly I will be interested when and if this comes back for the development piece of it to see how that traffic goes, because that's my big issue. So.
Okay. Anybody else on that? Okay. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go on to drainage now.
The property is in the Falcon Drainage Basin. The property is not located within a floodplain as determined by the FEMA flood insurance rate. MAB panel number 08041C0561G. Dated December 7, 2018. The property is in Zone X, which is an area of minimal flood hazard. The property lies within the Falcon Drainage Basin, which is part of the El Paso County Drainage Basin Fee Program. Drainage basin fees and bridge fees are not assessed for MAB amendment rezoning at this time. And the fees will be collected prior to recording the final plat. A final drainage report and grading and erosion control plan is not required with a MAB amendment request, but will be required with subsequent development applications. Do you have any questions for me on that?
Any questions on drainage? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn it to.
Before I proceed, I would like to make one point of clarity in response to the question and the discussion topic that we all had. This is a rezone application. As I said, we are looking at the maximum possible use. When this application comes in for a final plat, staff would not consider it an approvable application with more than 25 units on a single access. So they will have to provide that second access point if they want to proceed beyond 25 units on this property. This was a discussion that was made in the early assistance meeting we had with the applicants on this property, so they are aware. They will need to work with the adjacent property owners in order to come to some sort of resolution to get the second access point. We had also suggested maybe going with a lower density zoning district, and the applicant elected to proceed with the RM30. I can also say that the Falcon Field project on the east side, if I can go back to the map. Right about here where the cursor is, they are proposing a stub out to a potential cross access point. So that is something that is already being planned for with the Falcon Field project. And hopefully if they can get these other property owners in between the two developments on board, we might be able to get a second access point for this property. But I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and on the record that we won't be entertaining a process whereby more than 25 units are coming out of a single access in this instance. Did you all have any other questions about that specific item or anything else that I could clarify before we proceed? Okay.
Don't say anything, thanks.
Okay. So just finishing up, the planning department notified 24 adjoining property owners on July 1st, advertising this hearing and the board hearing. To my knowledge, we did not receive any responses in EDARP or through the mail. So then at this point, if there are no more questions for staff, I would like to turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Mr. Dossi, welcome.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Morning, gentlemen, the Planning Commission. Craig Dossi with Vertex Consulting Services. I'm not going to go through the same stuff Ryan went through. I think the master plan stuff's pretty clear. I can touch on the traffic a little bit. When we first started, and I think Daniel touched on this too, we were asking for a full movement intersection. CDOT didn't give us that. Then we asked for a 3/4 movement intersection. CDOT didn't give us that. We're left with a right in, right out. And I even brought up in my discussions with CDOT, well, then doesn't that mean that anybody that wants to go southwest into Colorado Springs then has to do a U-turn at Woodman and Highway 24? And they said, yes, that's what that means. And I said, well, that's unfortunate. But in limiting that access point, they did say that in the event that there's not a stub out coming across those two really narrow parcels to the north and east, that they would be willing to allow for a temporary emergency access only, also along Highway 24. So that addresses the 25 units on a single point or single access point. Obviously, the best case scenario is a stub out from Falcon Field across those other two parcels. It ends up becoming a timing issue, just like most access issues seem to. We think that the density is entirely appropriate. I honestly think that this parcel with the two next to it could end up being all part of the same development. When we were out there posting, I believe both of those parcels are also for sale. This one's going to be for sale as soon as it gets zoned. Our client is not going to be the developer of this property. It'll be somebody else. But it is, it's in the Falcon Town Center. Centralized services are right there. It's the right zoning for this area, but access is tough, just like anything that fronts CDOT controlled highway. There is no other access point though. So CDOT's kind of stuck legally with at least giving the access they're giving. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. The rest of it I think is hopefully pretty straightforward.
Questions from Mr. Dossi? I did have one.
Sure.
And you kind of alluded to it when you said this isn't going to be the developer. I actually found it interesting in the letter of intent. There was no intent. There was a lot of analysis about the master plan, but there was no intent. And it wasn't until I dug into the traffic study that I found the perhaps maximum number of units at 349. And I realized we're, as you said earlier, we're in this isn't perhaps the place for a plan, but I found it interesting that there was no intent in the letter of intent.
Well, and I think even beyond that, Mr. Trowbridge, if you look at the shape of this parcel, it's going to be challenging to lay this out to maximize certainly RM30, maybe even more like a 20, just because you have these steep points, particularly in the north end. Then you add in probably two access points, one being the emergency one. You're just never going to get to 30. It's not going to happen. But we're left with what we're left with in terms of zone districts that the county offers. This could come back and, like I said, be paired up with the other two parcels to the north and east. And, then you don't have an access issue. Then it's probably a little bit easier to lay out. You may have the right in, right out, but your secondary access is on a county road instead of off the state highway.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else? Nope. Thank you, Mr. Dossi.
Thank you all.
Anything else from staff before I go to public comment? Nope. Okay. Now's the time we have for public comment on this application. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anyone here who would like to speak against this rezone? Okay, seeing none, we will deem the public commentary closed. And there's no need for any applicant rebuttal. So commissioners, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shipples.
I'll just add, you know, since we talked about the traffic and stuff, and yes, that's jumping the gun a little bit, but hearing a little bit more as far as, yeah, that's the highest density. And if they can get the other lots, they can maybe do that or trail down. So I get the rezone to the higher density. If they can get there rather than a lower density, then they got to change it if they can get there. And with what was said about the 25 units on the one access, that it wouldn't be approved at the RM30 level if they don't get those other things. I feel better. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to kind of take a minute and talk about the process and, more importantly, the assumptions that we make. The fact that this was originally on the consent calendar, you know, indicated to me that staff had done their job. There's no public outcry against this. The concerns that they have didn't warrant a full hearing here because of the point at which we are in the process. Simply rezoning something to give a property owner the ability to possibly develop that property in the future is exactly where we should be at this point. And we actually have more information than we would normally need to have this conversation. If you look at the criteria for a rezone, the only issue is the compatibility one. The zoning map clearly showed that in this area, the rezone is appropriate, given the PUDs around it, given the commercial development around it. I think that we need to be careful as a planning commission that we don't project too much. Often the public immediately jumps to RM30. That means it's going to be the maximum possible density. No, as you discussed, the maximum density is, we have two choices. We have RM12, we have RM30. And somewhere in the middle is probably the right answer, but we don't have the opportunity, the applicant didn't have the opportunity to ask for something in the middle because it doesn't exist. So I just wanted to, as I start to feel my way getting back into this, that we have to be careful about jumping to too many conclusions, asking all the right questions, but understanding, at least in the back of our mind, that those are questions that we're going to be looking at down the road, and it could be years down the road. Who knows? At this point, something that meets these criteria, or the criteria that we're asked to assess this application on, in my mind, it's clearly appropriate, and so I'm in support.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Byers?
So appreciate the comments. I will start by saying that I'm not opposed to the zone. The RM30 is perfectly acceptable zone here. I also would like to say that if we're including traffic impact studies, then that's fair game for discussion. And it was included, we reviewed it. It doesn't quite hold up to an acceptable standard, but that doesn't mean that this zoning request is out of line. Those are mine. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Whitney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just and to confirm Mr. Schippel's point, I think Ryan's clarification on the 25 units makes me feel a lot better. So it was fully discussed, and with that checkpoint in place, I feel much better.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion. Don't all jump at the chance at once.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bailey?
I realized I haven't made a motion in a while, so I need to get the notes back out again. With regards to agenda item 3B, file number P264 for a map amendment rezone for the Kyle rezone, I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with 2 conditions and 2 notations, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byers. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the chair will call the roll. Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. Byers,
Aye.
Mr. Shipples,
Aye.
Mr. Whitney,
Aye.
Mr. Brewer,
Aye.
Mr. Wolf online.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, and so this is recommended for approval unanimously. Thank you, everyone. All right, with that, we will move to our final item today, agenda item 5A, file number MP245, a master plan for the South Powers Extension Planning and Environmental Linkages Study and Access Control Plan. Say that really fast.
I won't try. Good morning, everybody. Victoria Chavez. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager for the Department of Public Works. We are here today to present our Planning and Environmental Linkages Study and our Access Control Plan. We've been working with regional partners, not myself, for over 50 years to put together a corridor around the city of Colorado Springs, Powers Boulevard. Now that we are looking at having the middle section, constructing the north one, we are looking to look at the south end, and we'll be looking to get this plan approved at some point in the future so that we can start preserving the right-of-way. Today we have Scott and Maureen from Wilson and Company to go through the plan for you.
Hi, I'm Scott Asher with Wilson and Company. I've been the project manager working with Victoria and Alyssa and Howard Schwartz before he retired on the South Powers Extension. And really glad to be here to present this to you and get comments from you. Let's see here. Make sure I can, glasses helps. So quick project overview is, as Victoria said, this is sort of the last phase in the South, or the Powers Extension and Powers, loop around the east side of Colorado Springs. The area that we're really looking at is from Mesa Ridge Parkway, where currently Powers turns from Powers in to go west on Mesa Ridge Parkway. Mesa Ridge Parkway is intended to be an east-west corridor, and that initial connection that was made several years ago, back in 2009, 8, or maybe before that, was really always intended to be a temporary interim connection. It was never planned to be the final connection to I-25. So we've been looking at, the study has looked at really that extension down and where it makes sense to tie back into I-25. The study really is a partnership between El Paso County, City of Fountain, Colorado Springs, Colorado Department of Transportation, FHWA, and the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. They've all been very involved in directing, or not directing, but participating in the process and in the plan as a whole. And that was definitely by design. The corridor history is, as Victoria said, it's been over 50 years in the making. This corridor really, it was 1964 is when the initial planning started to be looking at what do we need to do for long-range planning. Went through a lot of different iterations. In 2000, there was a study for the South Powers Extension that was, again, it was PPACG was the lead on that, with support from Colorado Springs and El Paso County and City of Fountain at that time as well. So we used that initial study that was done in 2000, 2001 timeframe as a baseline, and to go through, verify, update, address changes. And that's really what we've been doing when we started this project back in, I guess it was early 2023, when we started the initial planning on it. So the PEL, and just I should define what PEL is. PEL is a planning and environmental linkage study. It's basically a a framework of the study to follow the federal process, and it's NEPA, we call it. NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act, right? And so what we're doing is with this process is setting everything up in this process so the next phases can go, all the work that we've done is not throwaway, right? It's developing a purpose and need. It's developing the alternatives, recommendations, so it can move into the next phase of environmental clearance in the NEPA process without starting over from scratch. So that's really one of the benefits and the goals of a PEL process and project. And since there's not final construction funding, that is also why we didn't want to go straight into NEPA, because in order to get a decision document from FHWA, you need to have a funding plan and sources for the corridor. So this is the first phase in this project as we move forward, and more detail to come as we move as the project progresses. So really what we've done from a process standpoint, we've gone through the reason envisioning. Why do this? Developing that purpose and need. Did an existing conditions assessment that was completed that we based a lot of the analysis off of. We've done the purpose and need and goals, working with all the stakeholders and agencies and through public comment. Developed alternatives, which had a multiple screening process. We went through that, and then the final PEL report, which is what we're presenting today to you all. As we move forward from a schedule standpoint, like I said, we started this in late 22, early 23, when we really started moving through the process. We've been going through the review and approval process with CDOT and FHWA for the past couple of years, making sure we're got all our I's dotted, T's crossed, everything works, and are now bringing it to final approval and review. So purpose and need. When we went through the purpose and need, that it really is why do we need to do this, right? It's not necessarily just because of all the traffic bombs, right? It's a connectivity and network connectivity process need for the overall corridor. It helps to improve and relieve congestion on Mesa Ridge Parkway. It helps relieve congestion on I-25 and improve safety. It's really a safety and connectivity, network connectivity focus for what the purpose and need really is for the project as we went through that. And so that was really what we based everything on when we looked at it. So, purpose of the transportation improvements recommended in alignment for the South Powers connection from Mesa Ridge Parkway to a new connection with Interstate 25, south of Colorado Springs and Fountain. This new corridor aims to enhance the regional mobility and integrate, future multimodal opportunities. The study will define in the phasing and next steps for the overall implementation of Powers Boulevard in the south. So that's really what the purpose of what we're trying to do is, right? That's what our goal is. That's what this study's laying out for us. Next slide. So the needs for the corridor, like we said, is really that advanced local and regional mobility, incorporate multimodal opportunities, within the corridor, so we're not precluding things in the future as things move forward. So just from a context, when we look at this, so the planning context, when you look at everything that's been done, what we're working with, the studies and the plans, right? So there's a lot of existing planning efforts in the corridor from a transportation planning standpoint. So we worked with Victoria, obviously, with the El Paso County Major Transportation Corridor Plan, and have the corridors incorporated or coordinated that with their plan that was approved in 2024. We've worked with the City of Fountain on their master transportation plan and making sure that this project is consistent with their master transportation plan. Colorado Springs Connect COS also has the connection coming down through here and connecting into the routes in the area that we have as well. So we've been doing a lot of that coordination with them and making sure those plans are consistent, as well as being consistent with PPACG, moving forward regional transportation plan that was adopted last year. So all the plans have been coordinated, make sure that we're consistent with as we move that forward. I also like to note that the South Powers connection and Powers Boulevard as a whole is part of the National Highway, Strategic Highway, the National Strategic Highway System and Access Network, the StrayNet, I guess, is what part of that is, because of the importance from the military connections as well with I-25 and having that reliever route for things to get around. Other existing planning efforts in the corridor, obviously the county master plan. That's where we wanted to make sure that the PEL and what we've done here for the planning process gets ultimately adopted into the master plan. The Colorado Springs Plan COS, like I said, that was done in 2018 has been updated. We're doing that coordination through that for a lot of the land use, looking at land use planning, what their annexation plans are, things like that. So we understood what all was coming up, as well as the Fountain Comprehensive Plan. So other things that we were looking at, especially when we really started the project, there's a lot of development that was being considered, right? So there was a lot of pressure at the time. Well, hey, we have a lot of development, a lot of projects, things that are happening in this part of the city and the region, and we wanted to make sure we're planning it. So as we were going through that, there's some major developments that looked at that are being considered in the area that we want to make sure that they didn't develop with and preclude the potential of the extension, and make sure we're coordinating with those potential developments to help define that corridor and what makes sense for what they're doing, what we need to do as we go through that. So there are several of those projects. Some of the projects have sort of taken a back burner, but still the plans are there, right? I mean, there's still things that are going to happen and develop down in this area that we want to make sure we're moving forward with and understanding that. Again, like we talked about, is the need isn't because of development for this corridor. It's really a mobility connectivity need, but we want to make sure we're accounting for the development and the future development that's coming. Environmental resources in the corridor, there's a lot of different things that we've been looking at. There's a lot of wetlands in the area that we want to avoid. There's some different T&E species that we're assessing and looking at. A lot of trails, existing trails that are there that we want to look at how do we tie into. So it's sort of looking at the overall big picture from an environmental standpoint. The good thing was, as we went through that, there was no real major concerns from, deal killers from an environmental standpoint as we work through with the recommendations. So the alternatives development analysis process, like I said, we developed alignment alternatives. We started with what we understood, what was done previously to revet, any of the existing alignments that were considered in the original study back in 2000, 2001 timeframe. Moved some of those forward and got in didn't move some of those forward. Some of them are like, well, the development's happened now. We're not going to go right through a brand new neighborhood that was built in the last 20 years to do that. So there was things like that became, well, those just aren't feasible, right? So we looked at a lot of those as we move forward. Review the updated study area conditions, eliminated previous alignments, like I said, and identified new alignments as we move forward. And so we had a two-level screening process where level one was really looking at all the different corridor alignments. We had 18 different corridor alignments that we were going through, sketched on paper, that went through a level one evaluation of feasibility. Does this make sense? Does it meet the purpose and need, right? Because your alternatives are always going to be first and foremost, does it meet the purpose and need that we develop for the project, to screen some of those down. Then we went through the level two analysis, which was a much more detailed analysis. And scored those based on meeting the criteria, because we developed evaluation criteria based on the purpose and need and public comment and existing conditions. It included environmental components, mobility components, traffic, impacts, all those things that are part of that process. And then really the level three piece was looking at, okay, now that we have an idea of where the corridor is what does this typical section of the project need to look like, of the corridor, right? The intent of Powers Boulevard ultimately is to be a freeway, right? That's what it's classified as by CDOT, ultimately to be a freeway around the east side of the metro area. So what does that typical section look like? So we do a corridor preservation appropriately for it. Like I said, some of the things we looked at for the level 3 typical sections was really, what's the ultimate corridor look like? Utility, corridors potentially, making sure we preserve enough right of way so that we can make sure we can get things done and in and build this road without encroachment into the right of way that would require us to go back and buy additional property in the future, things like that. So, based on all the study going through a lot of the public process, and we'll talk a little bit about that, we came up with a recommendation, right? So out of the recommendation came 2 corridor alternatives that we've carried through the PEL for corridor preservation. If we look at this as really being sort of a 2-step process or 2-phased approach, it's not sort of an either or, it's a this first, then this second, in the long term as the need arises. So really what we're looking at is this E3 alignment is, we're extending Mesa Ridge down through Cross Squirrel Creek, following sort of the alignment through Cane Ranch that was preserved through the annexation with the city of Fountain, and then bringing it back and tying into a new interchange just north of the Ray Nixon power plant area, right? Basically, if you're familiar with it, and I know these maps are pretty small, we have a much more detailed map on the website that's easier to see some of the details, but it basically for all practical purposes, it's sort of where the railroad tracks bend away from I-25 before they loop into Ray Nixon, right? So there's a good landing spot for that connection there and interchange. It also ties to the development, the planned development on the west side, which is the rail park area that they're looking at, that, being a multimodal facility between rail, being able to get truck traffic in and out, as well as out to the airport and moving forward. The ultimate section then would be the H3 alignment, which is basically an alignment that goes around the east side of the Callahan Reservoir, comes back across, and then ties in down by the Pikes Peak International Raceway area, that interchange down there. This section here, like we've always sort of talked about, is, we're thinking that is years, 50 years out, and really things would need to change to provide that need for it. But we want to make sure we're planning for it in the future. So if development does happen, there's some challenges with property down here right now. If it never develops, then it maybe doesn't ever become to fruition. But E3 is really that first phase that we're looking at. So as we look at it in a little bit more detail, we sort of looked at, okay, what is the project prioritization? What do we look at? How do we start implementing it in the future? And when I say implementing, sort of prioritizing the funding to actually move forward with using it to preserve the corridor design, and what are sections that could be constructed if funding becomes available. Because we understand and we fully believe that building the whole thing at one chance is very unlikely. It's going to be a phased approach. It's going to have to be a phased approach from the funding standpoint, unless we get very lucky and money starts falling out of the sky. So, which in my 30 years, I haven't really seen that. So, and as sort of mentioned, is that we had as part of this process is a very extensive public engagement process, right? So we had as we went through that, we had the project management team that was sort of a focus team that we met weekly through the process to work with it. Included El Paso County, the consultant team. CDOT was involved with that. We also had the technical teams, and this is actually where we brought in all the agency partners into that. So had representation from El Paso County Traffic, Parks, planning was involved, CSU, Colorado Springs Utilities was part of that technical team. City of Colorado Springs Traffic and Public Works and Planning were part of that. Same with City of Fountain, CDOT, FHWA. So we had all the players. PPACG was in the technical team as well, right? So we had a lot of the agency players in the region, all part of that to make sure that as we're developing solutions and corridors and developing the document, that everybody was like, yeah, this is right. We had an executive oversight team that was also made up of the project partners with FHWA, CDOT, the county, City of Fountain, and PPACG as well. And then there were stakeholder groups. So we had the stakeholder group that we knew that, we're going to have the military bases were involved with that. A lot of the development community was involved in that. Other stakeholders that we thought would be interested, the airport, Colorado Springs Airport, things like that, Motor Carriers Association, because we have freight and a lot of the different, connectivity issues that we want to work through. And so we had a lot of the resource agencies, right? The Corps of Engineers, SHPO, FEMA, all of those folks were part into that stakeholder group to keep them apprised of what was going on, and also solicit feedback from them of, do you know something that we don't know that from your agency's perspective that would be a challenge and it'd be an issue? So like I said, there's a lot of coordination with the Colorado Department of Transportation. CDOT, since ultimately Powers Boulevard, north of Mesa Ridge Parkway at State Highway 21, the extension ultimately will become part of the State Highway 21 connection and ultimately will become a CDOT road is what the anticipation and the plan is. So they would control it all the way around. So they needed to be part of this process, buy into it, and make sure that we're following what their requirements would be as we start looking at criteria for it. Federal Highway Administration, obviously, because we're setting this project up to make sure that it's still eligible for federal funding in the future, we wanted them, and that's why we're going through the PEL process with them to set it all up so we can, apply for grants and not have to backtrack with anything if grant funding or different federal funds come available. And then the City of Fountain, obviously, they were directly affected by this, a big chunk of this goes through the City of Fountain properties, what potentially could be City of Fountain as well. So they had a strong seat at the table with us and worked a lot through things with them. And, I think I saw Ben Sheets here as well from the City of Fountain, and he was heavily involved. Now, the public engagement part of it was we had a lot of meetings with the public. We had 2 rounds of open houses that we did, but we also had a lot of public meetings and just stakeholder and direct outreach to potential impacted property owners. We initially sent out certified letters to folks in the project, everybody in the project area, just to make them aware of it, so that if they had questions, what was going on, we would sit down and meet with them. And with that, for that sort of that first phase, I want to say we had over 45 individual one-on-one meetings that we set up at the city, or the county office, and had them come in so we could go through what the process is, what it's looking like, what the potential alternatives are, so they were aware of it, provide feedback, understand that. And that a lot of that feedback we got from the public and from the communities really helped us refine alignments in the corridors and the alternatives. We went through that. The second round was about 6-7 months later, very similar process, but realistically we ended up what did we have here? 86, I think, public meetings or meetings with individual property owners throughout the corridor. We met with some smaller groups with the, there's an enclave along Furlong Circle off of Mark Scheffel there that we went and met with that group because one of the alternatives was potentially going right through Furlong. And based on the coordination and the discussions with them, we're like, well, we should be able to shift and avoid that so we don't take, an entire neighborhood, which was really, when it came right down to it, was more like a family homestead down there. We're like, that's not the right thing to do, right? Go take that out. So we're weaving that around there. We really looked at a lot of that feedback to try and help gauge and refine the corridor where we're going with it. So we also had two public open houses. The first open house was sort of a hybrid one. We had an in-person in May of 2022 to kick off the project, go through everything, go through a lot of the analysis and just gauge feedback. It was also a virtual, so it was also open so people could attend because they're, coming out of, on the back end of COVID, there's still a lot of folks that were really looking at virtual as a good option because they could get in and see stuff and we could present a lot of things online. Compiled all those comments and brought that in. Open house number 2 was January of 24 when was open, I should say, was just a virtual open house on that one, but we had it open for a longer period of time because there was so much information that was being presented. We wanted people to have time to go through it, provide comment, and we recorded all those comments. All the comments received have been compiled and incorporated into the PEL, the appendices of the PEL as well, of how that was done. Let's see. The project website obviously was one of our big ways that we were doing communication with the public as well, providing information, keeping things updated there as things were progressing. Also, e-newsletters. We did e-newsletters to the mailing group, anybody that signed up for the newsletter when there was changes, and we'd send out updates, several throughout the year, the process to make things going. So to try to keep everybody engaged and up to date of what's going on. So I guess really we had 118 total comments logged through the engagement process. A lot of email, a lot of phone calls. We had a hotline as well as we went through, and it really did sort of feed into all that input, feed it into what we did with the alignments. So we went through that public process, we did tweak the alignments. We tried to avoid some things. So this is the final post recommendation alignment refinements based on all the public comment we heard. What the areas that you'll sort of see it is we sort of shifted the E3 alignment to be a little bit straighter coming through to try and minimize and avoid some of the planned things that were happening adjacent to the Callahan Reservoir in that area, as well as try to minimize impacts as much as we could through the Hannah Ranches property as it comes back and crosses. We also made some tweaks here where the E alignment comes into play and comes and goes and ties in. Originally, we had it sort of cutting across this way here. Getting into it's like there was a lot of potential private property impacts there. We were able to look at how do we refine that, shifted it. We can't, a project this big, we can't avoid impacting everybody, right? But we've really got it down to we've have two major property owners here that would be impacted as we cross, and then more of it as we go to the east is more of the ranch land, and then the Woodmore Valley or Woodmore Water and Sanitation has property through here. Most of the corridor on this north end was coordinating through the development process with developers to secure the right-of-way already up here, and to preserve it, not necessarily to secure it for sure, but preserve it. So this part of the corridor on that north end is very well defined and moving forward. And then this section here and to the south is really where the next sort of phase of preservation will come into play. And part of the process, and I'll bring Maureen up, was coincident with this. We're actually doing the access control plan that goes with the recommended alternative alignments, so we can define how access will be provided to that. So Maureen, when you bring you up.
So Maureen Paz-Diarujo, I'm the planner part of the presentation team. And just want to wrap up where Scott talked about the value of the PEL moving into NEPA and all the funding. But the other part of this is it's very much like a corridor preservation plan that you have adopted as part of the master plan before. And it has value to your planning department. It has value to the developers because they have a known environment, and as they go through development review. So the part that Scott's gone through, we've identified the alignment, we've identified a typical section, so we have an envelope for right-of-way preservation. The next thing that we have to look at is access management. And you mentioned that this would start out as an expressway class facility and then move to a freeway as CDOT takes it over. So we have to keep in mind in terms of that, each one of these entities, El Paso County, Fountain, City of Colorado Springs, CDOT, have criteria for spacing of access. And we do access management to preserve the viability, the function of the roadway in the class that it's supposed to perform. It improves safety, fewer decision points and conflict points, accommodates travel demand, and some things that are not shown here. We talk about congestion and so on, but also provides a redundant route and improves emergency response and freight delivery. A lot of reasons why we need this facility in a community of our size. Preserves economic viability. That's what I mentioned about having a reliable environment. And it can enhance aesthetics when we have that in place. Let me see. So the spacing for those classifications of roadways are a minimum of 1 mile, and when we get to the freeway class, 1 to 2 miles. So in terms of that, there's a stray bullet here. I'm not sure. There are in E3 alignment, there we have an interchange at Mesa Ridge Parkway, and then one at Squirrel Creek Road. Those are shown on this overall map as A's. And then an unnamed new developer roadway. It's part of the Fountain Transportation Master Plan. It was what was going on then. It may not be that development, it may be another development, but we anticipate that there will be access there. And then here, where you have we have the E3 alignment and the H3 alignment. And Scott mentioned that this may be a long time in the future, but I want you to understand that we included the H3 part because it has significant value that it delivers in terms of addressing those goals I mentioned. So we want to make sure that we don't preclude that happening, that we plan to preserve that right of way and access. So in that area, because there's a lot we don't know, we just have the interchange here where the two segments would connect, and then the I-25 interchange at milepost 121.2 down here. But there could be 2 access points depending on what happens in that area as far as development. Whoops. So the IGA is a little bit different in that the access control plan is a little bit different in that there's going to be an IGA that will be adopted by the Board of County Commissioners, the City of Fountain, and CDOT, so that they're all partners in making sure that through their development and review processes, we stick to these access points. That's already been drafted, and legal reviews have been conducted both by the county and the city of Fountain. It's on CDOT's table in Denver now. And so that will be moving forward soon. So I think it's available, well, I know it's available in EDARP, but the full access control plan includes an Appendix B. And they're the two graphics that I showed you, but here's an example page. Whoop. That shows the detail relative to this particular segment on the key map. And you'll see that there's an A line. So there's no access where that blue line exists. And then there's just an A indicated. And this was kind of a different thing for CDOT to look at because they're used to seeing what the interchange looks like. So there will be cuts in that access because the ramps will be allowed to connect there. But that's where it will happen. So, and this slide just goes over what I told you about the access spacing and what we were targeting. And I think I'm turning it back to Scott to talk about next steps. Yes.
All right. So as we move forward with the access control plan and the PEL, really the next steps are getting through the final approval process. Ideally, as Victoria mentioned, at a later date, bringing this back to you all for final adoption into the El Paso County Master Plan. But also with that is moving into the next phase. There is the county and the city of Colorado Springs have partnered as well with the PPRTA to have funding available to move forward into some of the preliminary design and right-of-way preservation. And that's really sort of that next phase of the work. There's no construction money, there's nothing like that. But what this is doing is setting us all up, the project, especially as we go through the right-of-way preservation, to then start looking for other funding sources, be able to have it ready to go, get grant money, things like that, and really keeping the options open for all the different funding scenarios that could come, because we never know what changes on the federal level with grant programs and transportation funding bills and things like that could provide funding as we move forward. So that's really sort of what that this sort of shown as we have the study phase. We're getting into the right away and acquisition phase and preservation phase and design, working through that, and then ultimately trying to get to a construction phase for one project and get it all due and really finalize the corridor. This is not a short process, right? Transportation projects never are. It'd be great if we could start building something in 5 to 10 years. But there's no money for it right now. Hopefully we can have the connection to I-25 done before, 2045 at this stage, right? But that's really what the goal is of the plan. So from a hearing process standpoint, just so everybody knows, we're here today for our initial one. We're anticipating coming back in September for final adoption is what the goal would be if we, as we address comments, any comments that we receive through the public hearing process today. And then, like I said, we've shared with the public through any newsletter today's meetings. We'll do that whenever we're on the agenda next time to make sure the public is aware. We've gone through social media posts, had website updates, so the PEL document as well as the access control plan are posted to our website as well for public review if they weren't able to get through EDARP. Since I know a lot of the public, it's easier for them to go there than to try to find something in EDARP, right? Those things are all there as well as the recommendations. So we're trying to keep that website up to date to make sure that people have what they need to understand. So with that, or public comment. I don't know. I'm sorry. I threw the slide in there.
So are you done with your presentation?
Yes, I'm done with the presentation.
Yeah. All right. So we'll open up for questions from the commissioners. Anybody have questions? Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll throw it out there. I noticed, and I had the question too. Why no connection with Mark Scheffel?
It's a good question. There is one of the questions we had there. The part of the reason is a twofold issue, right? One is the spacing between Mesa Ridge and the interchange at Mesa Ridge and Mark Shuffle is too tight. It'd be less than a mile spacing. And because of the impact that would happen there too, it would have a lot greater impact on the private property that's along Mark Shuffle at that stage. Also, the goal is that Mark Shuffle actually, as Mesa Ridge Parkway continues east-west, we want Mark Shuffle as that expressway to sort of end at Mesa Ridge and use the Mesa Ridge interchange to get on, right? And so that was really some of the big things. Is there's some technical challenges with getting it all to work realistically as well.
No, thanks. I knew it was close, but not necessarily that
Scott,
close.
also from a network connectivity and functional class, the west portion at that interchange would be CNS Road, which is a minor arterial.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. So I see several people in the audience today. How many people are here and want to talk about this, give comments? Or are y'all just here to look? So I see a couple. Can we take a break for a few minutes? It's been about an hour and a half for us up here. We'd like to take a break before I open it for comment. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, let's come back at 20 till 11 and we'll pick it back up. Thank you. They can take their seats. We'll get back to business here. Thank everybody for your patience with our process today. So we are listening to item 5A, MP 245, the Master Plan, South Powers Extension Planning and Environmental Linkages Study and Access Control Plan. All right, so we were ready to take public comment. So who would like to come up and speak first? Please, yeah, whoever wants to come up first. We do ask you, we have a sign-in sheet if you haven't already signed in.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't need
Yeah.
to do both.
No, you don't need to do it twice. We just want to make sure that we know who you are and we have your name for the record. So you can give it to, would you give it to our secretary, please? And she'll make sure it's part of, she can do that. Yep. And make sure it gets on the record. Yeah. So please, when you get to the microphone, please state your name and give us your comments.
Hi, my name is Eric Eklund, 2 E's, same as the E route, which I'm against. I have met Scott several times. I have been part of everything they have done as a property owner, homeowner, business owner, stakeholder along Old Pueblo Road. Wedgwood Farms is the northeast corner of what used to be the Locke Ranch, which was an original Colorado ranch north of the El Paso County, Pueblo County line. So that northeast 80 acres, my father-in-law acquired back in the 70s, turned it into a landscaping tree farm, hence why it's called Wedgwood Farms. It is a lovely piece of land, and we are one of only 2 property owners south of Fountain who have land on both the west and the east side of Fountain Creek. So Fountain Creek splits our land. It's about 80 acres, 20 acres on the east side of the creek. The creek itself is about 20 acres and then about 40 on the west. And we do have an agreement with Colorado Springs Utilities for access through Clear Springs Ranch. I bring up all this because the E route directly goes over our rooftop. I mean, not just through our property, it goes through the only part of the property we actually have infrastructure, house well, irrigation well, home, barns, things like that, equipment. The document that they're making copies for you includes a petition by myself and all the neighbors along that south portion of Old Pueblo Road to please not consider option E. Once again, I don't know why, call it coincidence, call it bad luck or whatever, that Eric Eklund and E are the same. But anyway, our Our request is to route south. It's not that we're against the project. We live here in El Paso County. We see the need. The request is that originally, which you'll see in that the documents you're going to get, there were about 10 routes, which he mentioned, and we requested that one of those southern routes south of our homes, our land, be considered. Primarily, you only have to go about a mile south of our place at 13030 Old Pueblo Road, and there's a stretch of Old Pueblo Road that has no residences and is directly across from Clear Springs Ranch, and you could route it not very far to the south around everybody's homes, cross the creek, and then just go across the Colorado Springs utility land right over to I-25, just south of the railroad interchange that goes into the Ray Nixon power plant. So there are options. The other thing about our place, which they mentioned, is, you know, trying to go around wetlands and things like that. Our place is mainly a wetland. We only have 3 out of our 80 acres that's above floodplain. Those happen to be the 3 acres where things are, which is right where E goes right across. We couldn't even go, well, okay, build on our south property line and we'll go to the north because it is floodplain. And when I mean floodplain, it's only about the height of this podium, most of our land above the average water level of Fountain Creek. And it does flood about every 10 years. So we have done extensive, I can't tell you how much sweat equity I have in this land, putting in dikes, working with the Corps of Engineers to make it usable and good, yet floodable too at the same time. They talked about a new overpass. All the homeowners, we are not against a new overpass on I-25 that would go into the industrial park area on the west side. We're not against that. That is well removed from us. I would say one of our things when I hear things mentioned like preserving hiking trails and things, I'm like, okay, Clear Springs Ranch has hiking trails, but let's not preserve hiking trails over people's private property, homes, businesses, and the like. Yes, putting this interchange across the south side of Clear Springs Ranch would go across some hiking trails. So I would ask you, would you rather a new boulevard mow down your house or move a hiking trail? Those are the arguments that I come before you with. The state of what's going on right now, I've participated along with a bunch of my neighbors and all these things. I know I'm almost out of time, and those have been good. I don't know if our voices have been heard, maybe acknowledged, but not heard much with all the other stakeholders. But really, all communication ceased April of 2024. So over a year ago, we haven't heard anything till we got an email just about 10 days ago about this meeting. So I don't know, as you see the date on that document is February 22nd, 24, because myself and a bunch of neighbors went to the county commissioner planning meeting, just like this one, stated our case, and then we haven't heard anything since. So in the past 16 months or so, it sounds like they've been busy, but I don't know what's been going on. I'd like to answer any questions you may have of me, knowing that I'm out of time. Do you have any?
Any questions for Mr. Eklund? No? Okay. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you coming here
Thank you for
today.
your consideration.
Absolutely. Just want to make it clear to folks in the audience today, we are not voting on adopting this today. This is the first of 2 public hearings. So there will be, and it was alluded to earlier, there will be a second hearing, perhaps in September, October timeframe. It'll depend. So keep your eyes open for that. So there will be a second opportunity, and I'm sure there will be revisions to the plan in the meantime. So keep your eyes open for that. Okay, I saw another hand out there. Yes, sir. Please come forward. And yes, we do appreciate everybody coming here today and listening, providing us feedback. It's an important part of our process.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, my members of the Planning Commission. My name is Steve Mulliken. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I am an attorney here in Colorado Springs. I was last before this group, I think, representing the what we call the Southern Colorado Rail Park, which is a rail park just on the west side of I-25 near the Nixon power plant. And we were very fortunate to have unanimous approval from this body for our sketch plan. I want to talk about the importance of what you're doing right now. This is the Planning Commission. Mostly you sit there and look at applications from an individual developer. Today you're really serving as the planning body for what I think is extremely important. This Powers Boulevard extension, ultimate connection on the south to I-25 is very, very important. It's great planning that's going on, and I salute you. This is, when you think of a planning commission, this is what you should do. So it's very important to safety, important to traffic flow for our greater area in the long run. I got asked for the rail park to pick a contractor to work on our traffic side. And I want to talk about process mostly and who you're using. And we looked at who had done the work, who was a great transportation engineers, and we picked Wilson Company as well. We did that because they've done work for you, they've done work for Fountain, they know this area, they are great traffic engineers. Scott Asher and his group do great work, so I think you did great with that. I also think what you have to ask is, have we gone through the right process? We at the rail park have been very impressed by what they've done. They really have reached out to all stakeholders. They've been thoughtful in everything they've done. And planning a corridor for a brand new road is a difficult challenge. You know, you're going to irritate a lot of people usually in the process. Many people aren't going to want it. This is regional planning. It's important in the overall important to our region. And it's important they use the right process. And I think from what you saw, Scott, present, they've really reached out. They've reached out to us. They've reached out to the Pikes Peak International Railway, and I just talked with their principals. They're in support of this as well. I think they picked the right location. We watched them struggle. Again, you can't really do a new road of this magnitude without impacts on someone, but they looked at all the various impacts as far as I could tell. I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm unfortunately not a lawyer, but they have struggled hard with it, and I think you can have a lot of confidence in. Last thing I'm going to say is the person running this for the county, Victoria Chavez, she is terrific. I spent a number of years on the first advisory committee for the Board of County Commissioners for our long-term transportation impact fee, which is also something that was controversial at the time. She ran that program, and I watched her work. She's extremely bright. She's very, very fair. She cares about the county. She cares about long-term planning. We're blessed to have her here, in my opinion. So I think you've got a great contractor that was selected. You got the perfect person on the staff to do the long-term planning. They've been very thoughtful in what they've done. I know there will be impacts on some people, and I feel sorry for Mr. Eklund. You know, it's a bad situation. But I think you have had great people working on this with a great process. We, on behalf of the rail park, are very supportive of the plan, anxious to get it ultimately adopted. So I'm probably out of time, but that's my comments. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mulligan. Was there anybody else here who wanted to come up and speak? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Chavez, would you or the engineer like to come up and say a few comments before we close things out today?
Absolutely. Thank you for this time. Thank you to the public for coming out. We recognize this has been a very long process. Working through CDOT and federal highways has not been a quick or easy process. We did have to sort of stop at one point when the new law came out about ADA accessibility and web stuff. We had to stop and go back and redo graphics and things like that. So we have been working behind the scenes to get this through, but I am thrilled to have Wilson and Company on this, and we look forward to addressing comments and moving forward, bringing it back to you.
And any final questions for Ms. Chavez or the engineering company? Mr. Byers?
Hi. I guess I'd like to know what the response to Mr. Eklund was when he presented this issue.
I think I'm going to let Scott answer that. He has had a lot of contact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to thank Mr. Eklund for coming. We did meet with him a lot, and I don't disagree with anything that he said. And the concerns that he has, he's shared those, we've worked through those, we've looked at a lot of things. Like everything, there's balances, right? So we tried to move things across. We looked at the options that he talked about of having it further south, bisecting Clear Springs Ranch instead of just across the northern piece of Clear Springs Ranch. So we're looking at a lot of different options. We've looked at, most likely what's going to happen in that stretch that goes across his property is it'll be on a viaduct going across the top, right? So there'd be a bridge over the top going across, just because it has to go over the creek, it has to go over I-25, has to get over Old Pueblo Road and the railroad before it touches back down. So we're looking at those options. Those are things that we'd have to consider as we move forward in the next phases of the project, really to sort of really lay that out. What are those impacts? Are there other things we can do to try and mitigate or minimize the impact to his property and maybe even his structures that are there? He and I have talked about that too, that, they have so much of their properties in the floodplain that they can't really do much. Well, those are things I empathize with immensely. But we also have issues, and I know the Hannah Ranches aren't here today because the H3 alignment goes right through the Hannah Ranches, and they have the very same concerns, right? Longtime ranch, longtime property owner. They have no desire at this stage to sell or do anything. They're trying to do conservation easements around their ranch. So there is no silver bullet. Like, we can do something that avoids everybody, right? There's always challenges. And as Mr. Mulliken said, we've really looked at it, and we will continue to look at it even as we move forward in the process.
Anybody else? Thank you. And thank you for your presentation today. Very, very thorough. Okay. Anything from staff before we close out today? When's our next meeting, Justin?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So the next hearing would have been August 6th. That has been canceled. We don't have any items for that agenda. So the next Planning Commission hearing will be August 20th.
August 20th. Very good. All right. With that, we're done for the day. We're adjourned.